Alright, what's up, y'all? It is the 2nd of June, 2025. My name is Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company. This is In the Image Clothing Company Podcast, episode 129, titled, You Never Know. Alright, we'll get into it. I'll talk about it, right? We'll do what we do. Play a little guitar as an intro. I'll talk about each of the four sides of In the Image Clothing Company and then where clothing sits. And the discussion will then follow, okay? So, yeah, yeah. Listen to this. Let's say this is a ukulele, okay? Okay. Red the guitar is not a ukulele. He's a 3/4 size Johnson JG610R. I said N in the last one. It's just the color, okay? Natural versus red. But that's where his name comes from, okay? Is the color, so... Red the guitar. I've been thinking about this, because I've been going through a lot of stuff, bro, and I got no need for anybody to be any, level of catering to me by any means, but I've been thinking about, how you never know what anybody's going through, dude. Okay? And you just never know. And you never know. And you just don't. And you don't know. I just got back from a barbecue. We'll talk about it if I do. Alright, so you just never know, okay? So that's what we're going to talk about in this is that you don't know. You never know. You never could. Actually, you don't know what anybody's going to go through or what they're going through in the meantime. Okay, so here's the thing, bro. In the Image Clothing Company, there's four sides to us, by the way. I'll talk about each of the four of them. This is our main side, except it's not. I'll talk about that. But this is In the Image Clothing Company podcast, where we have discussions on the gospel of Jesus Christ. I'm going to address this shirt, okay? I don't run, and this shirt is something I bought used, so it's nothing to do with me, okay? As far as, what's displayed here on this shirt. I usually wear things that are, logo-less and brandless. In the Image Clothing Company clothing will always be brandless on the exterior. But I bought this used, okay, and it's good. It fits me in the ways that it does. Alright. The dreaded color scheme modification under In the Image Clothing Company, okay? Make sure you do it. Make sure you do it. But yeah, we talk about the gospel of Jesus Christ here. Just talk about things as they are. So here we are, okay? Doing that. We have our main side in the Image Clothing Company where we address the human body. We come at it through the skeletal system because the fat content changes and the muscle mass changes. And really the human body is about its foundational positioning, which is a neutral in every joint, okay? If you're in visual plus audio of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, sometimes I do some visuals, okay, to show the human body and the only way that it could ever work. Because there's only one way the human body could ever work. We're just a mechanical machine placed onto a rock in space, the human being on Earth, okay? We're all God's children, and we all have just this journey that we go through here. And, yeah, so there's a center line to the human being. The sternum, the spine, the trachea, the nose, and our jaw is in the center as well, but it stabilizes the entire body. The muscles of the jaw start here at the lower jawbone. They go all the way up the side of the skull, close to the top of the head. And, yeah, it's really important, okay? So clothing has to stay centered, otherwise the human body can't, okay? Feet oppose the center, gripping arches inward, keeping us vertical on Earth's gravity. And, yeah, so we talk about clothing, bro. We talk about eating because the jaw, right? Standing, sleeping, sitting, hydration, walking, seriously all the things we do as a human being, because any of them are just like everything else, okay? I mean, it's just the body. Which brings us to In the Image Clothing Company music. I show how to size and set up guitars to not alter the body, okay? There's only one neutral position to the wrists, and the hands are essentially the shoulders. The feet are essentially the hips, okay? So I also make music on In the Image Clothing Company music, but I show how to allow your that's real, by the way. Yeah, but I show how to make it so you can shred guitar, bro. Like you're just Okay. I show how to make it so you can do that kind of stuff and never have to adjust your hands. Well, you can't adjust them, but even massage them out. I mean, there's just only one neutral inline tracking position for anything in the body, and if we just let it do that, it'll just do it. That's designed to work by God. There's an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled "Designed to Work." Okay. Yeah. There's another fourth of us in the Image Clothing Company Poodles. We address how to let dogs stay natural, okay? We have dogs in our lives when we do. We specialize in standard size purebred poodles. Talk about alliterations and rhyming. I might continue to, if and where I do. Okay, so poodle parade events though. Any dog that is only these two types, meaning, well, okay, there's many types of poodle mixes, but purebred poodles of any size and or poodle mixes of any size, we get together under In the Image Clothing Company Poodles here in the state of Utah. We go on hikes and walks and hang out at parks and just talk about how to let dogs stay natural and have a good time with each other and let the dogs have a good time as well. And that's always going to be scheduled on InTheImageClothingCompany.com, okay? Breeding program under In the Image Clothing Company Poodles, proper AKC registered dogs, right? American Kennel Club. So they actually have a birth certificate, and we can document them in history and help further good bloodlines of healthy dogs, and, you know, do a lot of advocating for proper breeding, proper ownership of dogs, and products, right? Similar to human being clothing, In the Image Clothing Company clothing, always on InTheImageClothingCompany.com. Stays centered, fits correct, is made out of 100% natural materials because the human body is only natural, okay? Yeah. And that's how we allow the body to work, which is our key phrase, right? For the human being, because you can never train it to do anything because it only has operations. I mean, you can't train bones to like bend or do something different, okay? And the only reason we have musculature, which is what people try to address, is to operate our bones, the skeletal system, which just connect to each other with ligaments, and you know, the muscles connect to them with tendons. There's only one way it could ever do anything. There's no opinion for anybody to ever possibly debate or like not believe in, because believe it or not, don't, okay? An episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, things are just what they are, and we can see it if we can see it, but wow, this is cool. No, in all seriousness, we really just talk about things that that allow me to use the phrase, it's as obvious as it is once you see it, because we all, you know, kind of get like an aha eye-opener moment when we see that there's only one way the body could ever work, and that it just would, unless it was restricted by something. I mean, that's why we're given it, to go across this earth with. It's our vessel, right? To just to move us across the earth that God created for us as spirit children of His. Truly, I mean, this is really what it is. So there you go. All right. But yeah, poodles, man. Products, you know, because we'll make dog products always that are good, okay? Dogs' collars have to be centered. I mentioned the dreaded collar seam modification in human beings' collars of their tops. Dogs have very, very imbalanced collars at times, and it's just pulling on them, man. The dog is just as much a machine on earth as a human being. The same things I mentioned with human beings, dogs have trachea, spine, jaw, nose, all right, in the center, on Earth's gravity. So we love standard poodles here, and it's gonna be really, 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 really huge. All that we end up doing. Okay. So with dogs, specifically standard purebred poodles, where clothing sits is the same for everybody. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, if you're tall or short, if you're skinny or fat, or any age or any part of the earth or from any time period to ever be. Okay. Our bodies just can't be restricted. Pants have to be entirely above the hips, so there's no restriction to the hips. Slightly higher in the front than the rear for the angle of the waistband, because our core muscles are just only there to always work. Again, they just would unless they couldn't because something was not allowing them to externally. Okay? That's how we allow them to with pants on. Okay? The tops that we wear have these seams that are on top of our shoulders. They need to sit evenly behind the peak of the shoulders because our shoulders only ever work behind our head. And the edge seams of our tops should just be right at the edges of our shoulders because that's just where the functionality of the ball and socket joint of the shoulder is. Two things we have as prerequisites under In the Image Clothing Company. Conditional in the ways that there's not always ropes in shoes. We call them shoelaces. And there's not always tags in clothing. But tags have to be removed. They're only decades old as of today's date. Tags being placed into clothing, that is, okay? They're either causing a physical gap, just changing the only working position of the skeletal system, okay? Check this out. The rear of the collar, the left side of side seams in shirts, which we should never have anyway, side seams against our bodies, tubular t-shirts, okay, so that the body can actually bend because the spine's supposed to. And if you place a seam there that's just hanging straight down when the spine has its natural curvature, it's just not going to be able to bend naturally at all. But the rear of pants, the side seam of pants, in the front of pants by the hip flexors, there's tags sometimes. In shoes, there's tags. Remove them all because your body cannot work with them against it. Okay, because also it just won't let musculature activate. Like in the shoes, the ones that don't actually stick out, but they're just slippery. Okay, get some texture to them or just entirely remove them. Ideally, the second or the latter, right, of the two options there. But In the Image Clothing Company's shoelace technique is what we label the only way that you can actually put a rope across the top of your foot in a weave patterning that doesn't alter the feet, okay? And yes, my nails are quite dirty underneath, okay, for those of you seeing. But we tie shoes as well, and you have to tie an opposing knot, meaning an opposite knot on each side of the feet. Oh my gosh. On each side of the body. There's a center line, so you got to do it so that it's even from that outward, okay? Over toward the inside, we tie our shoes on both feet. I was 24 years old before I started doing that. One of the main things that caused me to be able to even found In the Image Clothing Company, okay? So there you go, all right? There you go. Now your body's unrestricted. But there's other things too, right? I mean, keeping short sleeves short. A video under the main side of In the Image Clothing Company. We have to fully be able to yes, extend, okay, but also contract our elbow joint without a piece of material getting pinched in the elbow or sitting on the forearm that just deactivates the muscles of the shoulder like the upper trapezius, okay? And yeah, there's a lot we talk about, but the baseline is where your clothing sits, angle-wise, like I discuss in our intros, okay? And then from there we do little modifications where we need to, okay? But In the Image Clothing Company clothing, at least it'll be our intent behind our designs to never have there be any modifications that you would have to do, or anybody, just to allow your body to work. Okay. Now, here we go. Okay. You never know. You never know is the title of episode 129, and I might have said 128 earlier. This is actually episode 129 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. Okay. Because you just never know what people are going through in the gospel of Jesus Christ, aka the truth of all things, okay? Gospel means good news. Jesus Christ is our God, universal. Not like some religion to believe in, it's just things as they are because he's the creator of it all. It says, treat others how you want to be treated. We call it the golden rule, okay? Yeah. You just never know what anybody's going through, bro. And ideally, we can treat other people how we'd want to be treated. And that's never going to happen. When I say never, I mean it's never going to be always the case. But we can do that when we can do it, okay? And we can improve on it where we can, and we can repent for the times that we don't do that, right? Which means just giving an apology to God, saying, hey, I treated this person terrible. I'm sorry. They're my brother or they're my sister. Even if it's not biologically, as if like, you know, you take a blood sample and it's the same DNA, we're brothers and sisters in Christ, as we say, right? In the body of Jesus Christ. We're all his children, literally, actually, spiritually, okay? Yeah, we're all equals, bro. So we need to be able to try to do all that we can to treat everybody how they deserve to be. And how you know how that is how would you want to be treated, you know? And I'm gonna say this, I treat some people pretty darn terrible sometimes. But the thing is, you just never know what people are going through, you know? And sometimes people are just acting out in ways, and you don't really want to treat them so nice because it's like, dude, this guy is yelling at me. You really expect me to be kind to him? Well, maybe the reason the dude's yelling at you is because at home he's getting beat up by who and what, okay? Or he's always getting the blame placed on him when it wasn't his fault, you know? Or the dude just got like a divorce on his wife's end of things and she left him. Or his cat died, you know, and he's had this cat for like 14 years. And he loved it. And he'd come home at the end of the day and just cuddle with his cat on the couch. And he's just grieving a loss. And so the dude's yelling at you and he's acting out, right? Because he's got some stuff going on that you just never could have known unless he did. And so you just got to be kind to him either way. But again, that's hard. I don't do that always. None of us will. But the whole thing is striving, right? And that's the biggest thing to see is you just never know. You never know what anybody's going through, bro. And, you know, myself is one of those people, you know, where, man, sometimes I act out, bro. And sometimes, you know, all through growing up and then, you know, right now and then through the rest of my life and the times that I do and will because I'm a human being and we all do it where we do. But sometimes I just kind of lash out at people, you know, and if people just don't know what I'm going through, then hey, you know, you might think that I just got like a hot-headed temper for no reason. But, you know, you never know what's going on behind the scenes. And I think the big thing to see with that is a lot of people just don't talk about themselves, you know, because it's not actually necessary to. Yeah. Some people just don't really know much of anything else besides talking about themselves to other people. And then some people actually have their own life, and they don't have to talk to other people about themselves, okay? And they can and do in times, right? But, you know, you just never know what people are going through. Like, truly, actually, literally, you just couldn't, all right? Like, always, right? I mean, sometimes people are going through so much, bro. I'm going to give a little bit of context on me personally. I'm the founder of In The Image Clothing Company, all right? What I do here is talk about getting out of chronic patterning and scar tissue in the body from imbalances in clothing for years, potentially decades. And as we do that, man, I literally might tear up, no joke, because this is crazy. Our bodies have so much going on inside of them that you might never know, okay? Your own body. You never know. I mean, you just might not even know what's going on in your own body, man. Until you really start to get in touch with it, you know. And I talk about how I know the anatomy of the human body in great depth, and I do. There's so much going on that people couldn't even ever possibly understand or know, right? I mean, yeah, when I say right, don't agree with me. What I'm saying is this: I might tear up because I've been dealing with so much, bro. It's not some kind of like justification, like feel bad for me, but I'm saying out of personal experience because that's what I speak out of when it comes to In The Image Clothing Company. Okay, that's how this is a thing at all. Is me just talking about my personal experiences with things that we all experience. You know, on the human head, there's actually a video under the main site of In The Image Clothing Company titled The Human Head. There's so much musculature, okay? Between the skin on the scalp and the skull, which is the physical bone of our head, there's little tiny muscles all across the whole head. On the face, there's so many muscles going into it. On the nose here and the eyebrows, above the eyebrows, okay? all throughout. There's muscles, coming from the neck up into the jaw. The jaw muscles go from, like I said at the beginning, the base of the jaw here, clear up into the skull. Our jaw stabilizes the entire body. And so, a lot of times people go to like a chiropractor and they'll address like their back and maybe some ribs, and they might do a little bit here or there to joints of the body in other areas. But where the body really stores patterning is in things like the nose and the eyes and the jaw and how our teeth mesh, because that is our jaw. And the jaw stabilizes the entire body, and it's just going to stabilize over your center of gravity, regardless of if your center of gravity in that time is actually over your body's physical center line. Again, undisputed. I know some people think it's a belief, but the sternum, the spine, we know what that is. The nose that has two nostrils opposing the center. The mouth, the jaw, the trachea where we breathe, this tube in our neck, right? But when we eat, we need to be able to eat with both sides of our body, okay? The mouth and the opening here in the face needs to be even left to right. Otherwise, when you're speaking, you're training a patterning imbalanced like this to the right side, right? The right-handed world, as our video under the main site of In The Image Clothing Company states. We live in one. Things designed for people to use are right-handed because 85%, give or take, of the population of the earth at this time period at least are right-handed, okay? Clothing patterns themselves are right-handed. So here's the big thing is, eating and drinking with the left hand is a video under the main site of In The Image Clothing Company, okay? We need to be able to keep everything centered, and these are things that you don't really see, you don't really notice. Because when the body's in a twist from its foundation at its feet, you might not notice an imbalance at the head, because it might look like it's over the body's center because the feet are uncentered. So everything from there up is over the feet, but they're not over the actual body's center, if that can be seen without just sitting here really deeply discussing it right now for this episode of In The Image Clothing Company podcast, because that's what we do on the main side of In The Image Clothing Company, okay? The amount of physical pain that I've been going through is crazy, okay? You can see my body's physical transformation, okay, from, when I started documenting things at the founding of In The Image Clothing Company through video until like the latest video, I guess, until whatever date you're there, okay, hearing what I'm saying. And, oh man, the jaw and the sternocleidomastoid, which is this muscle, okay, that comes from the rear of the base of the skull here, down our neck, and connects into our collarbone here, right by the sternum, right? Sterno, like the sternum, cloido, like the collarbone or the clavicle, as it's, scientifically called, right? I don't know about scientifically, but that's the technical term. And then mastoid is the part of the skull back here, right? So that's what this muscle is. And the rear of the jaw hits into this sternocleidomastoid, almost in every case on the right side of human beings, because, again, the right-handed world, okay? Now, there's so much going on pain-wise in the human head. Again, we address things if people do workouts, which I say we don't need to, and it's not a claim, but your body's just designed to operate, okay? It's just supposed to, and it just should, really. I mean, if you've got your own situations, amputations, deformities, as I address, right, and whatever else it could be, then okay. But if there's not something like that that's actually like rooted in you, then if it's just patterning, well, it's something to address, and you can, and we show how to under In The Image Clothing Company. But there's just so much in the physical skull, okay, in the head of a human being, the actual physical head, not in your mind, in your physical head. The gap that the ear canals can cause, right? It's just cartilage in the ears. That's all the ears are, is just cartilage. And it's just the space between the rear of the jaw and the rear of the base of the skull. So, I talk about this right side of our rear jawbone here and how it needs to have room to not be hitting into the muscle there, the sternocleidomastoid, okay? And pinching the cartilage of the ear between the skull bone and the jawbone, right? Oh, man. And our noses, if you look at people, again, this is, we don't have some kind of like crazy breakthrough here that's like some reinventing the wheel under In the Image Clothing Company. We just speak things as they are. And you can see all the things we talk about in your own life and in the people around you. Your own life meaning maybe it's not your own body, but you'll see it in other humans if you're not quite in the, description of a patterning, but you are to a degree if you're wearing any clothing design that's ever going to pull your body to the right side, even just something that's slightly oversized, right? And even the collar of your shirt just off to the right side of your body more than the left. It's just training your body imbalanced, okay? The muscles connecting to the spine and they connect into the sternum. And those things are directly in the center. And the trachea is directly in the center. And our collars just need to stay centered, okay? Man. That's why I stress the dreaded collar seam modification so much. I used to say if I were to go a third, as far as prerequisites, we've got shoe lacing technique under the Image Clothing Company and removing all tags. I'd add the dreaded collar seam modification next. Over anything, even drawstrings that are imbalanced, right? The slipped lap knot, LAPP, okay? Tied, looped toward the center of the human being as you do it for drawstrings to keep them horizontal. But even over drawstrings, even over in the Image Clothing Company zipper modification, right? How zippers affect body mechanics under the main side of In the Image Clothing Company. Even over, man, whatever else it could be. The thing with the dreaded collar seam modification is it's the center of your body. Your upper trapezius here on both sides of your head, they have to contract even, or else your whole body, to the tip of your toes, the tips of your fingers, and the tip of your head, even though it's not so far from here, right? I'm just showing extremities, really, is damaged, altered, rotated, okay? The body's really about rotations, internal versus external rotation at like the hips and the shoulders. And I pointed to the shoulders when I said hips and the hips when I said shoulders. But that's why I say what I do, because it's the truth. The feet are essentially the hips and the hands are essentially the shoulders, okay? So you just got no idea what people are going through inside their body. But I do. I'm going to sit on that for a second because I do. Because I can see these patternings. Because I know this stuff in such depth. There's no way I got to prove that to you. Meaning, I've got multiple hundreds of like half-hour plus long videos as of today's date where I deeply discuss clothing imbalances, the anatomy of the human body, and the correlation between the two, okay? So, my head, dude, physical skull, okay? Like my nose and on my eyebrow here, okay? On the right eyebrow and along the right side of the eye here where the jaw muscle comes, right? Up here, right next to our eye. Like, again, those of you in visual plus audio, as I clench my jaw here, you can see the muscles up by my eyeball moving. And you can see this, when people are stressed sometimes, they'll clench their jaw and you can see it up into the side of their head, especially people with shorter hair, right? So the hair is not in the way, but you can see it right here. You can feel it, put your hand by the temple of your head, which is just right next to your eyeball, and clench your teeth together, and you can just feel the muscles moving. And everything just has to track in line. I talk about how the body has its neutrals. Neutral, natural, normal, they're synonyms in the human being, and they're the only thing it could ever do. There's only one neutral in-line tracking to the jaw. Otherwise, the whole body's out of whack, okay? We talk about eating, and you need to keep things within the bed of your teeth. When you eat things, don't shove it into your cheeks like some squirrel, okay? I'm not making fun of people because I used to always do that, at least for most of my life. But no, we need very small things in our mouth at a time. Let your saliva fully mix with it because it's the first form of digestion. It digests carbohydrates and fats before it gets anywhere near your stomach, right? and track your jaw up and down, straight in line, and you cannot with a dreaded collar seam, just meaning any seam in the collar of any top around your neck. Okay, so why I'm giving all this context right here in this episode in the way that I am, I mean, we talk about these things, but for this, you never know what anybody's going through. And I've just been going through so much because when I started tying my shoes even, okay, now your body's not being twisted from its foundation. And now your internal rotation on your right side, okay, in my case, because I'm right-handed and that's just the one that was tied wrong for so many years, is allowed to be there, right? And instead of being chronically stuck in external rotation at the foot, which is essentially the hip, which then travels through the spine up to the shoulder, which is essentially the hand, and then up to the head as well, just because it's on top of everything, being stabilized by, at the very base of our bodies, our feet, right? My jaw then has had to adjust. You know, the side of my nose here, how blowing the nose affects body mechanics is a video I made under the main side of In The Image Clothing Company. We get so much built up scar tissue here on the right side of our nose. Also just, I mean, the collar sitting uncentered. You're going to breathe and it's going to mostly come to the right side of your nose, and then it'll just be excessively like falling to the right, and your whole face is, and people smile and their right eye squints, right? Even eating though, again, right? You just eat with your right hand and pulling a utensil out of your mouth, or, you know, just opening your mouth to the right. You're going to wear your mouth uneven. Again, don't believe it. How many times have I said it? It doesn't matter, but I've said it a lot under In The Image Clothing Company content. Don't believe me on these things, because some of this stuff doesn't really make sense at first, but it's just as real as it gets. This is how I can say so bold and clear and truly, clothing is the only fix to human beings' problems physically. It is. Even internal things, as I'm discussing here. It's just the truth, okay? Your body's just going to work unless there's something placed onto it. It has to try to work around, okay? We need to move through life, not through our clothing, okay? Our clothing needs to sit at our joints. It needs to allow our joints to just be the only way they ever could be. So, and it doesn't, is the point. Almost any clothing you ever purchase from anywhere, unless it's handmade, custom fit, it's got imbalances. All right, so I've been going through so much pain. I mean, there's an episode of In The Image Clothing Company podcast titled Willingness, and I was just, not having it in that video. It was a video, but it was also an audio podcast episode. There's also one titled What Don't You Do? And I didn't end up talking about what I was planning on talking about in that, but I also put on their language warning. I got a little bit, lot of bit, saying some harsh words because I was going through so much physical pain during that episode. And it's beautiful for the sake of showing the credibility, showing what this really is. It's beautiful because you can look at my physical face. It's not about just like my biceps and my quads and my big pecs and the muscles that don't really need to be trained, right? Because the body's about its posterior chain, which is the rear of it, where the strength actually lies in the body. But, it's about like I'm saying in this, it's the head and the face, the teeth, the nose, the eyes, the opening of the mouth. These are actually things, right? Well, the ears and the gap here or not, right? Looking left and the importance of being able to requires the right side of this jaw to get back, okay? Which is actually an episode of In The Image Clothing Company podcast's title, Looking Left. There's also a video under the main side of In The Image Clothing Company titled The Importance of Looking Left, and one titled The Importance of Turning Right, although that's not exactly what they're titled. It says the need to look left and the need to turn right. Okay, because turning right is essentially looking left, just as turning left is essentially looking right, just mechanically the way the body has to operate, okay? So I've been going through so much in my physical head, and the root canal story is an episode of In The Image Clothing Company podcast. When I was 13, I got a terribly finished root canal on my front left tooth, okay? And the amount of excess filling material that they left behind the rear of my front tooth is something I couldn't even say in a way that you could understand, because it was like my tooth was literally twice its thickness, okay? And the front teeth just barely clear each other normally if you have just a naturally sitting teeth bite, okay? And so the rear of my right jaw here has been especially altered because of that for so many years, okay? And I had braces when I was 16 while I had that terribly large amount of excess filling material on my front left tooth. And I think we'll probably talk about braces where we talk about dental work, but you just can't actually alter the way your teeth sit without your shoulders sitting evenly, because your jaw is connected to your shoulders. Really, your shoulders are connected to your jaw. The human body can only ever work activated as a whole. If you try to adjust your teeth without bringing your shoulder with it, you're just going to cause a lot of damage. People get braces and their teeth get all straight, but then their oversized clothing pulls their teeth out of alignment again, right? Just like people go into a chiropractor's office and their body's so greatly adjusted until immediately after, because they're within clothing that's imbalanced. They walk out of the chiropractic clinic with their shoes tied unevenly at their foundation, or a dreaded collar seam in their neck, right? Just in the collar around the neck. Oversized clothing just pulling their body out of alignment, right? Drawstrings twisting their entire hips, traveling to the tips of their toes and the tips of their fingers and the tips of their head, right? So we have a lot going on in our bodies that people just never could know. And as I said earlier, I do to the degree that I do because I know what all this stuff is coming from. Actually, truly, no claim, no. Man, I have a thing written in my phone notes titled "Not Your Average 6-Week Program." For maybe a potential episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast to film and record audio wise, because people have their like 6-week programs or 8-week programs and your life will change, and I like the idea of like, this is not your average 6-week program. Like, this is actually your life will change, because it's the truth. There's an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled Never Be the Same, because once you know how to just be intentional about allowing your body to work, it could never be damaged in the ways that it has been again. It just couldn't happen. All right. So the amount of physical pain, it's not like some kind of discomfort. It's not like, oh, it's not the most pleasant. It's like, I've been through some pain, talk about major surgeries, and I do talk about it. I've had 2 full open heart surgeries. My entire sternum has been cut in half 2 times, opened up, and then they, work on your heart, and then it's been titanium wired back together. Like, I've been through some physical things that were major, and the amount of pain that I've gone through and stuff like this, like my eye area and my nose, and my jaw hitting my sternocleidomastoid, and keeping hands the same size under In the Image Clothing Company's main side, where our right hand gets so excessively opened and used externally rotated, and so it can't actually close and be even with the left. And so then people address their shoulders, but it's really their hand that's causing the shoulders to be damaged, because the hands are the shoulders, okay? So things need to fit in our hands is a video under the main side of In the Image Clothing Company, okay? Because they do. Our hands are meant to close, just as our feet are meant to grip closed with good, healthy arches. Muscles only contract is a video under the main side of In the Image Clothing Company. It's the case. It's the truth for everything in the body, muscle-wise, okay? Stretch goes the opposite direction of the only way that muscles could ever work. Stretch within clothing didn't even exist just decades before today's date when I'm filming this, okay? So, 100% cotton. That's why I say it, man. I didn't know until I knew when I was 24, okay? Years old, when I learned most all these things, okay? Yeah. So you just never know what people are going through, because these are things you couldn't see, you know? Somebody's not walking around with like a big old gash of bloody, you know, stuff going on their arm, you know, but they've got like scar tissue built up in their nose, under the skin, you know, and it's stuff like this. You just never know. And so a lot of times people think they have social anxiety, and they don't. In whatever way that they try to claim social anxiety being. What they do have is deeply ingrained patterning in their bodies from looking down and to the right at things in their hand. And then if they're in a conversation with somebody and they're looking left to talk to them, their whole body's uncomfortable because it's in a pattern that it just can't even do that motion. These are the real things that are happening. And this is why I say it, man. This is why we are what we are. This is it. I mean, this is how In the Image Clothing Company is huge. This is how it's a lifelong thing. This is how we're not about fashion. And this is really how we spread the gospel of Jesus Christ, because he's the one who designed the body. And this is what we need to actually address to get it to work. Everything else is conditional, and it's your, like, if you will, average 6-week program, right? It just doesn't work. Maybe it'll work for the, like, 3-4 days after the program's over, and then your body's just already back to its patterning, right? So, like, as far as a workout routine, because I have never, up until today's date, under In the Image Clothing Company, given a single exercise to do. I don't do exercises. Look, I'll show this, and I do it where I do, but look at my wrists, right? Look at my mobility, right? I'd show my shoulder rotations, but you can't quite see. I guess you can kind of see. On the main side of In the Image Clothing Company, when I make videos, often I'll just stick my arms straight out to the sides, and I'll just rotate my shoulders, because we should have full internal and external rotation at the shoulder capsule and at the hip capsule. And our wrists should just have all the flexion and extension and motion that they have been given by God. It's impossible, out of a human being's doings, to stretch into ranges of motion that God has just given us. Stretching is damaging. In order for the body to be activated as a whole, which is the only way that it can work, anywhere any of the body goes, all of it comes, the muscles have to get shorter. That's the only way they can do anything functionally. And so don't stretch them. But they have to be able to reside in their neutrals. And they have to stay out of stretchy clothing as well. Otherwise, they just seize up and overly stabilize when there's nothing happening other than the material is just not predictable for the musculature. Okay? Like the tags and the tongues of our shoes that people might not even think does anything to remove or not. But you have to remove them. Otherwise, your ankles can't activate, and your pelvis goes anterior, and then your spine goes excessively curving from the base of it up to the base of our skull, and then your whole body's damaged, okay? I mean, is this simple? This real? Well, it's simple. Nobody can be expected to know these things, but it is so simple, right? The feet are the hands, the ankles are the wrists, the lower leg is the forearm, the elbow is the knee, the upper arm is the upper leg bone, and the shoulders are the hips. That's how the body works. It's that simple, bro. When I say I know the human body's anatomy in depth, I mean it. And you don't have to question it. Don't believe me, but listen to what I say. So, you just don't know what people are going through, man. You never know, okay? Is the title of this episode of In the Image Clothing Company Podcast, episode 129. But it doesn't have to be just physical things, you know? People can be going through whatever, dude. And sometimes, you know, like I was saying earlier about lashing out, sometimes I do, right? I get swearing and screaming and yelling and, you know, thinking I'm just like the only one who can have a say over something, because I do things well. I do things really efficiently. I'm smart, and I got my hands up like, I'm not trying to be like, talking myself up, but it's just the case. I if I see something that just is going to be a waste of time, I'm like, no, let's do it this way, and it's going to be easier if, because it's actually going to be, right? But sometimes I just get yelling at people, man, and sometimes I get, so upset when people don't listen to what I say if I decide to actually open my mouth, because normally I just keep my mouth shut, you know? But again, it's like, you never know. You don't know what I was going through as a kid, you know, when nobody ever listened to me and nobody ever took my words into consideration at all, you know, and nobody meaning, you know, who I was forced to be around because I wasn't around anybody else to even care anyway, right? So you just never know why people are lashing out. You never know why people's lives look the way that they do. You never know why somebody, man, because I've been thinking about this, like hygiene type stuff. You never know if you know, whatever. Or somebody who, yeah, I mean, oh shoot. I just kind of knocked this camera back with my toe. I hit the base of what this thing is sitting on and it moved it. But you just never know, dude. The reason that people maybe don't seem the most hygienic, well, you don't know what their life situation's like in the times that you don't see them, right? If somebody's like so skinny and you think that they just like, you know, whatever you think, but maybe they have some kind of stuff going on like emotionally, where growing up they had a lot of, you know, really deeply rooted stuff around food and either lack of food or shame with food in some way, or guilt about eating food, or too much of it, or it's some kind of belief about their body that they have developed because of something somebody else said, or something that they just like thought up, or came up with or put on themselves because of something somebody else said that they didn't even mean to say in any kind of mean way, right? But it was more of an interpretation. Like whatever end it's on is what I'm saying. You never know, you know? Somebody might like be all stanky all the time and you're like, dude, does this person never shower? But maybe they don't have access to one. You know, I mean, you just never know, right? I mean, somebody's wearing the exact same outfit every day and you've seen them like 4 times in the past week. Maybe they don't have any other clothing. You know what I mean? People are so quick to judge. Well, it says that so much in scripture so clearly, you know, it's like, what I love in the Book of Mormon is it says, you know, the people that are wicked, you know, which kind of is kind of flip flopped a little bit as time went on, but the Lamanites at first, you know, is who it was. It says they were slow to remember the Lord their God, but they were quick to do iniquity, meaning like sin and be judgmental, you know, and things like that. So that's how we are as human beings. So quick to judge and often not so quick to forgive, you know, and be understanding. But the thing with being understanding is it does take experience. And that's why I say, you know, I without worrying about covering myself, so I won't. I'm just pretty wise. Okay, I truly am. You don't believe it, but you know, I got 128 episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast before this one, where you can hear a lot of what I say, and you know what you've heard in this, you can probably be like, oh, this dude knows quite a bit about life, right? Yes, that's why I am the one who has In the Image Clothing Company, right? Who has been given this to do for the rest of my life. In the Image Clothing Company and Evan Strong are one. That's one of our episode titles, okay, of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. But the big thing is, we need to try to be understanding. Try to give people what they call the benefit of the doubt, right? Which I don't really know exactly why it's worded that way. I could try to sit here and pick it apart. But what that really means is just try to like say, all right, even though it seems logical for this person to be acting in a way that they're not, there's probably some reason that they're doing what they're doing, okay, or that they're that whatever, right, is happening. We need to be able to try to do that, be understanding even if we don't understand, right? Because you just never know. And I mean, you just never know. Somebody could have grown up in a situation that you thought was only a horror movie plot, but it was just their upbringing, and it's just all they had, it's all they knew, and they were forced to do it because they were just a kid. And you know, we have to go through what we have to go through in the times that we do. The refiner's fire, you know, I mean, it's like what I'm saying about a lot of this has happened at night, you know, I mean, in the past while here, around founding in the Image Clothing Company time until now, right? All this physical pain I've been experiencing, a lot of it's been at night because I guess I don't know exactly why. I know, in some cases why, but things like the jaw pain and the pain in my nose and my eyes. When I say eyes, I mean like, our eye ball, we have two of them. It's just a hole in the head. It's just a socket where this eyeball sits in there and it moves in all directions. And there's so much musculature around the eye here. And if we're squinting or if we're looking at things at only one angle, then our body gets stuck in that patterning and scar tissue just builds up all around the socket of the eye. And well, if we just start at the very foundation, out of all the imbalances in clothing that we talk about, which we talk about every single one of them, because anything that's placed on the human body that clothes the human body is clothing the human body. And we talk about that. That's what we are as a company. In the Image Clothing Company. I just like yell. But so glasses. I wore glasses for 2 years. And they'll sit right here on the top of your nose. Man, there's a very thin layer of skin between your nose bone, which is just your skull, and then, where the glasses are just resting on there. So now you've got your feet tied unevenly, rotating your entire body to the tip of your head, the tips of your fingers. You're always looking in one direction, right? I've talked about one day maybe I'll end up doing some type of, I'm pretty sure I will. No, I'm not promising that will happen, but I'm pretty sure it will. A documentary titled Life in One Direction, okay? Because we're all living our lives in one direction, just to the right, if we're tying our shoes unevenly toward the right, okay? And then drawstrings toward the right as well, but then oversized clothing toward the right as well. The dreaded collar seam on the left side toward the right as well, right? I mean, no matter what it is in clothing that's an imbalance, almost everything puts you to the right, okay? And so now you've got these things we call glasses frames placed above your ears. And if you watch on In the Image Clothing Company podcast episodes, or if you can see it you can, yeah. Well, okay, I'll phrase it like this then. Yeah, on any four sides of In the Image Clothing Company, I move my ears a lot, like this. I wiggle my ears, and when you have glasses frames placed on there, that's not going to be allowed to happen naturally. And your nose needs to be able to fully scrunch like this. If you have glasses frames placed on there, that's not going to be able to happen naturally. No way. So we get chronic scar tissue. The word chronic just means like lifelong, right? Like permanent until fixed is really what chronic means. And that's how I use it, okay? Regardless of what the actual like definition is, but that's what it means. Yeah, that is. And so just so much scar tissue, man, where those glasses were sitting on my nose for 2 years, and it's going to be just worse on one side of your body if you're always slightly to one side. You're right. And slightly lower on one side. You're right. Slightly more external on one side. Your right side. Okay? Choose the right. The episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast where I talked about it. All right? Well, on the main side of In the Image Clothing Company, we've got videos titled The Right Collarbone, The Right Elbow, The Right Pelvis Crest, right? I mean, and whatever else I do get into making that I just haven't yet as of today's date, it's the right side of the body, and you just don't know these things because they're not externally visual unless you can see the patternings, which I can, and you can totally just get to the point where you can see what's going on, like visually, but you can't visually actually see the scar tissue under the skin. Other than, yeah, I mean, in ways you can. I was saying earlier, and I don't think I actually fully finished it. If you look at people's noses, right here on the right side, you'll just see there's like this bump. Ideally, our noses, when I say ideally, I just mean they would be pretty smooth, unless ever altered, from like between our eyes here all the way down to the tip of the nose, like off to the sides of it. But you'll see people's noses here, like right below where the glasses would be sitting, okay? And that's what does it a lot of the time. But even just, looking to the right, you're just squinting all the muscles off to the side. But then again, even just breathing through the nose, it creates scar tissue here, and it's visual from the exterior. That is one thing that you can actually see. That's what I was leading into this with. Some areas of the body you can't really see the scar tissue from the exterior, but some you can. You can see people's right elbow, and it's like a little pointy thing, more so than their left, right? And the right forearm here, where they're resting their arms down on things, right? And now your wrist isn't neutral, and just being so much more external. The musculature of the outer bone of the forearm here just adheres to the bone, and you can see this like separation from the muscle and then where the bone sits. You can see these things in people. That's what I'm saying. It's just what it is, dude. So, and the reasons it is are really what we do say they are under In the Image Clothing Company, because they work. They're permanent fixes, literally, actually eternal, and you're done as long as you're intentional from that point forth. So this is kind of like a two-part explanation, meaning the title is what I've been saying. You never know as far as what people are physically going through, but then the second part of it is, except I do, to a degree. And that's why I'm here. That's why In the Image Clothing Company exists at all. Okay? Because everybody has a body. And not only that, but it's the only thing that we have, which is an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast's title. Okay? So there you go. Okay? I'm going to wrap it up just like that. Today is the 2nd of June, 2025. My name is Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company. Stick around for the poodles and check out what we do, because it applies to you. Thank you.